Hi, gang. Today, what I'm going to do is read pages D22 to D27 to you from our science book. This way, those of you who are having issues with connectivity issues or internet problems or whatever the case may be, if you can't get online during class, you can always get on whenever your internet is working or whenever you can get on to Zoom. And you can either listen to the video or you can go ahead and just read the pages on your own and then complete the notes for today. And we'll go over them then tomorrow. So I'm on page D22 in the science book. We're going to take a look at space exploration. Exploring the solar system. Thousands of years ago, people observed the night sky and recorded their observations in cave paintings and rock art. These early observations were made without telescopes or other devices. About the only things early people could see were the phases of the moon and some of the moon's larger features. They could also see some of the planets and many stars. Then, about 400 years ago, the telescope was invented. It allowed people to observe objects in space in much greater detail. In 1609, the Italian scientist Galileo was possibly the first person to use a new invention, the telescope, to observe the sky. A telescope is an instrument that magnifies or makes larger distant objects. With this telescope, Galileo observed the moon and saw mountains, valleys, and craters that had never been seen before. He also observed the phases of Venus and four moons orbiting Jupiter. About 50 years later, English scientist Sir Isaac Newton used an even better telescope to observe other objects in space. The modern age of space exploration began in 1957 when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, an artificial satellite. A satellite is any natural body, like the moon, or artificial object that orbits another object. Sputnik, which was about twice the size of a soccer ball, carried instruments to measure the density and temperature of Earth's upper atmosphere. The United States launched its own satellite the next year. Soon, both countries were launching humans into space. And if you go ahead down and take a look at the timeline there, if you take a look at the first one, it says the Maya in Central America built many observatories or places for viewing the stars and planets. This one in Mexico was built about 900. Up top, then you see in 1609, Galileo used his telescope to observe the sun, moon, and planets. His telescope had two curved pieces of glass, or lenses, one at each end of a long tube. The telescope at the bottom of the page there, this telescope was designed by English scientist Sir Isaac Newton in 1668. It used two mirrors and one lens to produce sharper images than Galileo's telescope could. On our next page over here, we have, let's see, in the yellow box, the first radio telescope built in 1936 detected radio waves coming from objects in space. And then right above that, you'll see in 1957, Sputnik 1 was launched, and it circled the globe once every 95 minutes for more than a year before it fell back to Earth. The word Sputnik means traveling companion in Russian. Then in 1961, the Mercury program sent the first Americans into space. And then in 1969, the United States landed the first person on the moon. So go ahead and take a look at those pictures. And we'll get into this a little bit more once we discuss this a little bit more in depth in class. And I have some great little video clips to go along with this as we are checking some things out. On your next page, D24, To the Moon and Beyond. One of the best-known American space programs was Project Apollo. The Apollo missions landed 12 humans on the moon between 1969 and 1972. These astronauts set up experiments and brought back samples of rock. Their work helped scientists learn more about the moon. In 1977, the Voyager 1 and the Voyager 2 space probes were launched. A space probe is a robot vehicle used to explore deep space. The Voyager space probes have sent back pictures of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Both Voyagers are still traveling through space beyond the solar system. Other early space probes included Viking 1 and Viking 2, which landed on Mars in 1976, and the Pioneer probes, which used instruments to see through thick clouds that cover Venus. Today, scientists use the Hubble Space Telescope, satellites, and space probes to better understand Earth, the solar system, and what lies beyond. So once again, take a look at that, the timeline at the bottom there. Two Viking spacecrafts landed on Mars in 1976. They photographed their landing sites and sent back data about the planet's soil and atmosphere. Then the space shuttles, which have been in use since 1981, have many uses. They lift heavy cargoes into orbit and provide labs for carrying out scientific research in space. They also provide a place to launch, bring back, and repair satellites. And then at the bottom, the Hubble Space Telescope launched in 1990, and it produces images 5 times as sharp as those of any telescope on Earth. I think there's actually a new telescope too that they've been working on. I'm not sure if it has, if they've got it up and running yet. Mrs. Lewis was just telling me about it the other day. On the next page, on D25, I thought this is kind of neat because it shows the spacesuit and the different pieces of it. So I'll read the top, and then I'll let you take a minute and check out the different pieces and parts of the spacesuit. Spacesuits. The Apollo spacesuit below, once worn by Neil Armstrong, is a $10 million outfit made to protect an astronaut from the moon's hostile environment. The spacesuit must keep an astronaut from cooking in direct sunlight or freezing in cold shadows. It must provide the person who wears it with air, water, and waste removal for a moonwalk that may last up to 8 hours. The spacesuit must also be flexible enough for an astronaut to walk, twist, turn, bend over, and pick up objects in the reduced gravity on the moon. Flight suits, such as the one on the right, are much less bulky. So the orange one in the upper corner, that's just a flight suit. So go ahead and take some time and check out the different parts of the spacesuit there. Okay, if you need to, you can go ahead and pause the video so you can read those guys and look at them. And when you're ready, you can hit continue. On D26 and D27, space exploration in the future. Now remember that this is a very old book, so we might be beyond some of the things in here. The arrival of the first scientists at the International Space Station Alpha in 2000 marked the beginning of a new era in space exploration. As many as 7 astronauts at a time will be able to live and work in space. When completed, Alpha will be nearly 80 meters long and have a mass of more than 455,000 kilograms. In the future, larger stations could have room for 1,000 people or more. Settlements may one day be built on the moon or even on Mars, although there are as yet no plans to build bases on the moon. They could be possible by 2020. So we're past that and we're not there yet. A moon base could be used as a research station like those in Antarctica. To save money, some materials needed to build and run the base could come from the moon itself. For example, some of the moon's rocks contain oxygen. This oxygen could be taken from the rocks and used by people living on the moon. Recently, a probe discovered enough ice at the poles to supply a moon base with water. For electricity, the base could use the solar energy, and some minerals could be mined from the moon and sent back to Earth for processing. As a summary, people have observed and studied the moon and other objects in space since ancient times. The invention of the telescope allowed people to see features and objects that have never been seen before. Today, scientists use telescopes, satellites, and space probes to study objects in the solar system and beyond. In the future, people may live and work on space stations and moon bases. And actually, the other day, You guys know that the International Space Station, we do actually have that. We have people there. We were watching the live feed of that the other day of the astronauts doing the spacewalk. Um, so there are some things in this book that are we are working on, still working on, or have even gone past that. So what I want you to do at this point is go ahead and fill in the notes. If you need to, you can open the pages attached to today's assignment right here on February 2nd. If you have your book, you can go ahead and use it. If you're having trouble with any of the blanks on your notes, just go ahead and skip them, and then we'll go over them tomorrow, not a big deal. So in your packet, let me just double check here. It will be page 26, 27, and a little bit on page 28 for your notes for the day. So go ahead and do that, and when you're done with those notes, you can head out for the day. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or send me a message on Classroom.